As voters cast early ballots ahead of Election Day this coming Tuesday, we end today's show with the mayoral race in Minneapolis. Omar Fateh, the son of Somali immigrants, a Democratic socialist, is a leader.
Yes. Omar Fateh is the Mamdani of the Midwest, and he hasn't gotten a lot of coverage. I've obviously covered his campaign throughout the times. I unfortunately got into a bit of heat myself in the process, especially with the Charlie Kirk assassination, so I couldn't actually fly to Minneapolis and do a Omar has no motion. It's sad to see. Actually, you're wrong about that. As far as the latest polls show, some polls show Jacob Frey, who is an incredibly unpopular candidate, the incumbent, barely beating Omar Fateh within the margin of error by like 1 point on the first choice on the ranked choice voting, and Omar Fateh and defeating Jacob Frey on the third and fourth rounds of ranked choice voting, and therefore Omar Fateh still has a shot. In the upcoming days until Tuesday, I'm going to try to do a little bit of a fundraiser for the Omar Fateh team here, because I from what I understand, he gets no coverage whatsoever. But they have a pretty good ground game overall. Energy on the ground isn't looking good, to be honest. Yes, part of that is because the Minneapolis HasanAbi heads, we have to do better. Okay, we have to do better. We have to go and we have to fucking canvas. If you are in Minneapolis, but by and large, the amount of coverage that Omar Fateh has gotten is coming from the right. The only people that talk about him are right-wingers that just keep constantly saying, like, America's being taken over. America's being taken over by the Muslims. If you're not in Minneapolis, you should phone bank. If you're in Minneapolis, you should door knock. And hopefully we'll be able to fundraise as well a little bit here, because he's great. He's great.
Leading candidate seeking to unseat incumbent Mayor Jacob Frey, who's running for a third term. In 2020, Fateh made history as the first Muslim, first Somali American to be elected to Minnesota's state Senate. Fateh's surging campaign has drawn comparisons to Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic socialist, who polls indicate may be the first Muslim mayor of New York. Minneapolis Congressmember Ilhan Omar has endorsed Fateh, along with Jewish Voice for Peace Action and labor unions like SEIU. Minneapolis implemented ranked choice voting in 2009, which allows voters to choose up to 3 candidates in order of preference on their ballot. The winning candidate must receive at least half.
The problem is, we all know the electorate, okay? Let's be real. I think that in Minneapolis, you already have a built-in, very diverse group of people that are going to ride for you, that will overlook this sort of thing. But the broader base of support in Minneapolis is probably even more racist, I would say, than the New York electorate is. And on top of that, Omar is both Muslim and black. So he's getting getting hit from both ends in that regard. And unfortunately, racism is a major component in every election. The reality of the matter is it just makes it much harder, right? But as you know, my opinion on the matter, it's a hurdle that you can overcome with good policies, and Omar has done that. I would say that the biggest weaknesses beyond the obvious ones for the electorate being relatively racist is that a lot of people are not even aware that there's a Minneapolis mayoral race happening that's coming up. Unfortunately, it doesn't get the same national looks, but there is an opportunity there. The opportunity there is that, like, some of these races that don't get the same national looks can actually be unique opportunities for underdog candidates to win. The DFL is working to ruin his shot as well. Like the establishment Democrats, the institutional Democrats are attacking him. The wealthier interests are attacking him. He has the same exact dynamic as Zoran Mamdani, and he has very similar policies to Zoran Mamdani as well.
Half the vote. There are a total of 15 mayoral candidates on the ballot, with 4 Democrats, including the 2 frontrunners, Mayor Jacob Frey and Omar Fateh. Fateh is the only top candidate who's asked voters not to rank Frey, a centrist who's faced widespread criticism over his crackdown on Black Lives Matter protesters following the police murder of George Floyd in 2020. Frey has received the endorsement of Minnesota Governor, failed vice presidential candidate Tim Walz. Minnesota State Senator and Minneapolis mayoral candidate Omar Fateh joins us now.
Open presence, thank you for the 25
we welcome
gifted.
You to Democracy Now! If you can start off by talking about what the slate is that you are a part of, for people to understand around the country this issue of ranked choice voting and what you're moving forward on now, your major issues.
Yeah, first, thank you for having me. So we came up with the slate for change, myself, candidate Janice Hampton, and candidate Dwayne Davis, because we believe it's the best. We are the best three candidates to move our city forward. We came together around our collective vision, and yet despite our differences, showing that Minneapolis can have a different kind of politics where if you think differently, if you have slight differences in opinion around different issues, that we shouldn't have an adversarial relationship, and that we can still be partners in doing the work for our people, for the people of Minneapolis. And so our vision includes one, or my vision includes one, in which we make Minneapolis a more affordable city, increasing the minimum wage to $20 an hour, passing rent stabilization to protect our renters so they don't get priced out. It includes having a public safety system that reflects the needs of everyone. 5 years after the murder of George Floyd,
Also, Omar Fateh is a U.S.-born American citizen, too. He's not even naturalized, even though, of course, that hasn't stopped the Republicans from both presenting Zoran and Omar Fateh as like Muslim infiltrators from afar. I just don't see this working, sadly. Man, why? Why wouldn't you just push for it? Who gives a shit? Like, there is no reason. You can't just back candidacies that you think are always going to win regardless. First of all, there is a shot. You're wrong. If you look at the actual polls, Omar Fateh is doing very well. He won technically the endorsement of the DFL, even though they rat him afterwards. And even on the first choice ballots, he's within 1 to 2 points between him and Jacob Frey. Jacob Frey is the incredibly unpopular incumbent mayor. There is no reason to engage in this sort of pessimism, especially at this point.
Mayor doesn't have a plan or doesn't intend to have a plan. And finally, we have a hostile federal government with Trump back in office, who has the trifecta. He has both the House and the Senate and the presidency. And on top of that, he has a Supreme Court that's going to do and has been doing whatever he wants. And so as a city, we need to build a strong line of defense to protect all of our vulnerable residents.
Why would him being naturalized be a problem? No, I'm just saying that, like, Zoran is a naturalized U.S. citizen, right? And they were talking about denaturalizing him and my point is, Zoran is an American, okay? Zoran is an American citizen. He's a naturalized U.S. citizen. Omar Fateh is a natural-born U.S. citizen. And yet, for some weird reason, right-wingers attack them both as outsiders who are actually infiltrating America. I wonder what the reason for that is. Why is that a line of attack? That's the question I'm asking you, and I think we all know what the answer to that question is. It's just racism. That's it.
Feel, Omar Fateh, about being called the Mamdani of the Midwest. And one of the issues that Zoran Mamdani raises in this New York mayoral race is the issue of big money. If you can all...
So the irony, of course, is that while Frey is... You're not wrong, okay? I just don't see if a Zoran method is working in a city that's one of the most affordable in the country. That's like 50% of Zoran's appeal is still good, but I don't think it'll be as salient as it was in New York. Well, there are other issues there as well. So Cloud District Enjoyer is not wrong. Minneapolis still has unaffordability problems, though. That's the only problem. That's the only issue I take with what Cloud District Enjoyer is saying, because affordability is a problem everywhere. Because you are looking at it from a broader perspective. People who live in Minneapolis still have affordability problems. Obviously, if you adjust the affordability of Minneapolis to the affordability of New York, as someone who probably lives in a major city that is far less affordable than Minneapolis, you go, what do you mean? People aren't as mad about affordability. Of course they are. Poverty, affordability, these are relative constructs. So yes, while you look at Minneapolis from a national perspective, it is one of the few cities, one of the few major cities in the country that where affordability is not as salient of an issue as opposed to like New York, because it's much more affordable than a place like New York. For the people in Minneapolis, there are still significant problems.
Also talk about the role of big money in your mayoral race, PACs protecting the interests of developers and funneling millions of dollars into campaigns, and your chief rival, Mayor Frey.
Yeah, what we're seeing with Zoran's campaign and campaigns across the nation is that we're seeing progressive candidates running on a sincere and authentic message around affordability and making the lives of working families better. For far too long, the Democratic Party has lost the message around how to improve the lives, around the costs of living, around renters that are struggling with paycheck to paycheck.
There is no place on the country, there's no place in the United States of America, there is not a single place in the United States of America where the affordability message is not salient. Make no mistake. And even if we were living in an economic boom where everybody was like, oh, all my needs are met, you could still tailor your message around making things even more affordable, okay? Improving quality of life for every single person.
Struggling to make the next month's rent, struggling to pay for basic food and healthcare costs. And so this is kind of the reason why we saw a hard swing in 2024 with Trump winning the presidency, and now candidates on the left or in the Democratic Party winning with a similar message around affordability. Now, was Trump lying when he was running? 100%, of course he was. But he knew that that was the message that would resonate the most with the population. And so right now what we're seeing here in Minneapolis is that Mayor Frey has 5 PACs right now. Not 1, not 2, but 5 PACs that have been well-funded, that have been sending out glossy mailers, nonstop ads on social media and on YouTube and things like that. And the reality is that if an incumbent has been doing the on-the-ground work, connecting with residents, connecting with stakeholders, working well with city council and cross-jurisdictionally across different levels of government, there wouldn't be the need to spend that much money and having 5 different PACs to defend you. It's very telling that right now that the mayor doesn't have a single county endorsement, county commissioner endorsement, or state legislator endorsement. And it's because he hasn't been able to work well with others and has handed the city off in his last 2 terms to the wealthy and the well-connected, and not the working families. And so that has been evident throughout this campaign.
State Senator, your headquarters, your campaign headquarters for mayor in the predominantly East African neighborhood of Cedar Riverside, Minneapolis, was vandalized with graffiti that read, "Somali Muslim, this warning is no joke," in black marker. You're certainly not the only Muslim politician to receive these threats in Minnesota and nationwide. I think about Ilhan Omar, who has also endorsed you, the Congress member from Minneapolis. But can you talk about the rise of anti-Muslim hate, racism in the country? And do you think the Democratic Party and other Democratic candidates and politicians are pushing back hard enough?
Well, what we are seeing here in Minnesota, I believe, is a direct result of our welcoming, the way we welcome everyone and the way we uplift everyone. And what I mean by that is that we were the first state to have a Muslim congressman in Keith Ellison. We were the first state to have a Muslim congresswoman in Ilhan Omar, who has been serving honorably and serving CD5 and has been a rock star for all of us and a voice that we truly needed.
Is it a coincidence that Muslims have been the method lately? We got Zoran, Fateh, El Sayed, big election cycle for progressive Muslims. I don't think it's that confusing, because I think for like living in the United States of America, if you are from a Muslim background, you're, with the exception of Zoran, I would say, Zoran is the exception in this regard. You're usually coming from a lower income area regardless. You're coming from a minority group in the country that has seen the economic devastation firsthand, and therefore your policy vision reflects that reality. So it's the same reason why, like, American Muslims, by and large, post 9/11, are one of the more reliable progressive voting blocs in the country. And it's so funny that people still do this where this guy just said progressive Muslim is an oxymoron. Right now, in the United States of America, the most progressive politicians in office are by and large Muslim, especially on the Democratic Party front. Every single Democrat, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Zohran Mamdani, Abdul El Sayed is running for office, as we saw. These are the most progressive candidates in the country. Pro-trans, pro-labor rights, anti-militarism. They are the most leftist candidates you have. And people cope and seethe and say they're cultural Muslims at best, which is crazy to say about Ilhan Omar, who wears a hijab. It's crazy to say even about Zohran. Like, no, these guys are actually straight up. They are much more Muslim than I am. They are following the faith much better than I am, okay? I can't speak on Omar. I don't know. I don't know the extent of his, I don't know how much he practices or whatnot. But yeah, Ruhr Roman is another one. It's so funny to me that people still run with this like unimaginable cope where they're like, oh, they must be faking it. It's just so silly. And I think a part of that is because of the, a part of that is certainly born out of the fact that Muslims are actively attacked. Islamophobia makes it much easier to monolithize the entire religion and certainly the entire followers of this faith in the United States of America, even when all evidence points to the contrary. There are polls that show that this is not the reality. They are far, far more open-minded and far more progressive, Muslim Americans are, than evangelical Protestants are, for example. White evangelical Protestants are a much more consequential force in American politics. They're much larger in number. Obviously, it's a more fundamentalist segment of the broader Christian religion, but, they are a far more consequential group that has far larger numbers than Muslims do overall. And Muslims are much more progressive than evangelical Christians are in this country.
What we're seeing in the last few years is that I think since 2024, there has been over a dozen instances of attacks on mosques, for example. Minnesota has had, I believe, the first and only mosque being bombed in the entire nation. Over $3 million in damages, 3 mosques fully burned to the ground. Myself and other Muslim elected officials have been receiving threats on email and social media.
We have 20 seconds.
Yes, and through social media. And so the rise in hate we've been seeing has been a direct result of also Trump being elected. But in terms of campaigns, we've seen also Democratic campaigns latch onto this and use it in their own messaging. And
we have 20 seconds is classic. Amy Goodman. You guys don't watch enough Democracy Now! You're not ball knowers. That's not even disrespectful. That's just how it goes. That is just how it goes, baby.
Through their PACs to try to win their elections. And so rather than going on the defense for one another, they've been using it to sow more hate.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube.